Hey everyone! So today I want to talk a little bit about what I expected from tarot and what I got from it, which means what my expectations were when I first started, when I first got into tarot, and what I eventually ended up getting and what I eventually ended up achieving, and what thoughts that I have had before or assumptions that I had to let go. All right, so let's get right into it. When I first started with tarot, what I expected was mostly using it in a psychological sense, using it in a therapeutic sense, using it to go deeper into my own psyche and experiencing and sharpening my intuition beyond my ego. I didn't expect fortune telling, I didn't, but I mostly saw it as a psychological tool. Now, what I've actually noticed, now that I've been doing tarot for a while, I have realized that it's actually more than just your intuition that is in play. I used to think basically that it's just random cards and the cards give you what you make of them. So your mind is what determines what you see in the cards, or the mind of the card reader that you are having your cards read by. And that's about it. You kind of just make it, you interpret them in a way so it fits your situation, your mind, and what your subconscious wants to tell you. But as I have been starting to lay cards for other people, I have noticed that there's actually more to it. It's hard to put into words and it's hard to explain if you haven't put down cards for other people, because it's not something that you can excuse by saying it's just what my mind makes of it. If I lay down the cards for someone and they fit so perfectly that it cannot be a coincidence, even to apply to their present situation or to their past, which is, something that is more or less factual and that you can kind of see whether it's right or wrong. And if these cards just apply so perfectly and are so right, then oftentimes I feel like that can't be a coincidence. The cards are more than what we make of them. It's more than my intuition that I use. The cards, I don't know, it's like they are alive in a way. And I think this is something that me, at least as a beginner, I did not expect. I didn't expect there to be any sort of, supernatural aspect to it. I just expected the cards plus my intuition equals talking to my subconscious. But it's more than that, because the cards that you need will come up, and the cards that inspire you in the right way will come up, and you can rely on that if you're having a good session. Of course, sometimes it doesn't work out, but most of the time it does. Now, when I first started, I looked into a lot of tarot decks, and I ordered the one that I was familiar with from former times. But when it comes to buying new tarot decks, I was always under the assumption there's going to be a card I don't like. There's going to be an artwork I don't like. There's going to be an aspect of meaning that the author wanted to put into the card that I won't like. Now that I've actually worked with difficult decks, I've realized that it's really a matter of being open to the card and looking for the archetype in the card, because archetypes are always accessible. They are not easy to understand, but they are at least understandable. Just stick with it and search for an access point. And then even the cards where in the beginning you thought, that's not how I would have drawn death if I had been the artist, you might still realize, wait, there's something to it. There's an aspect to it that I didn't think about. Another thing I assumed when I started with tarot was that you cannot read for other people. I know there's a lot of card readers that say you cannot read for yourself, but when I started, I thought you can't read for other people. because, as I said, it's a way of communicating with your subconscious, which is a very private thing. So how would I be able to communicate with the subconscious of another person that I lay the cards for? That was the logic back then. Now, this was very much based on the idea that only my own mind can inspire me, and that my mind can only inspire myself, not others. But as I'm reading for others, I think if you listen to your intuition, if you're open to the other person's energy and their vibe, then you can definitely give them advice that is relevant to them, and you can help them find their path. You can't tell them their future, you can't tell them what they have to do. You can only give them inspiration, and it's upon them to see whether they want to take your advice or leave it. And sometimes, of course, you will do a reading and the person says, no, that's not true at all. That's a point where, of course, as the card reader, I cannot say, no, it is true. The cards say so, because maybe my intuition is wrong. But at the same time, you have to consider maybe the person is just not open to this pathway yet. Maybe it is a way they should explore, but they just can't yet. And that's something you have to take into consideration as well, obviously. So I do think that my mind and my intuition, I'm not psychic or anything, I'm not saying that, but intuition is more about interpreting the cards and being in touch with what my first spark and what my first idea is when I see a spread. Also, some way along my learning path with tarot, I felt like I could not get any more than platitudes out of the cards. I just hit a point where, you feel like you look at the cards and you're like, yeah, I know their meanings. Death means there's going to be renewal, be open to change. Or temperance means find balance, combine the uncombinable. Or the Hierophant means there's a lot of dogma in your life. Maybe you should take a look at whether your life is too rigid. It feels very mechanical. And in order to keep this from happening, you have to always be open to more aspects of the cards. And the platitudes that you felt like were just wise quotes that circle in your head can actually be used to ask constructive questions. If you want to delve deeper into a card, a quote is a very, very good way to do that. But you also have to have punchy questions, punchy taglines that kind of tell you, hey, this is what you should look at. Or if this card combines with that one, you should maybe ask yourself this question. And then it goes way beyond the realm of platitudes. The only way they stay platitudes is if you don't listen and don't follow it. If you just kind of read the cards and are like, yeah, renewal in my life, okay, maybe look at dogmatism, maybe see how rigid I am, maybe I have to find new inspiration. I don't know. All of these, they don't amount to anything if you don't actually apply it and don't ask yourself the questions that need to be asked and do the journaling that maybe needs to be done in order to use the wisdom of the cards rather than just read them. Now, this is the last point, and this is a very, very interesting one for me. I used to think that I could not get into silly decks. For me to be inspired and for me to feel like I'm having a very good tarot experience, like some good vibes and good energies, I feel like I need a certain sense of pathos or a certain sense of it being a solemn act that is almost ritualistic. It needs to be kind of mythic and kind of dark and kind of fantasy-esque as well. That's the direction that I'm going in. And that's why whenever I looked at decks that were, a little bit sillier, the multitude of decks there are out there, when I was a beginner, I was like, why would you ever make a zombie tarot deck? Or why would you make a slutty deck? Or why, I don't know, why would 78 artists get together and make one deck themselves? Like, and it's all different artwork and it's all over the place. And I just couldn't, I couldn't comprehend it. But the more I started studying the cards, and this goes hand in hand with getting away from mechanical readings, I realized all of these cards are valid because they offer a new perspective on a card that you may already know. So if you have death and there's a zombie eating the brain of a human, for example, I'm sorry, I hope none of you are scared of zombies or brain eating, then maybe this opens up a new way for me to look at this card. You can't just say, no, that depiction, no. You don't have to, but it's definitely conducive to your learning process if you think about what else that card means, and what aspects of this card are represented that you maybe hadn't even thought about before. This also applies to kind of non-traditional decks where, for example, you have the wands represented by arrows, or the cups represented by bows. At first, when you look at the cards, you're like, oh my God, what is going on? I don't know what this is. But then when you actually think about it, think about the symbolism of arrows, think about the symbolism of bows, it suddenly starts making sense. For example, one of the decks that I had a very hard time bonding with was the Secret Forest Tarot. The Secret Forest Tarot isn't a very colorful tarot, and it's not a tarot that I have a flip through video up on my channel, so if you want to see the deck, maybe look at that. It has a lot of symbolism that at first you don't even grasp. You have to look at the cards in order to understand, like look at them in their specific order, in order to understand that, for example, the earth cards are very dominated by the figures holding something that could be a stone or a cocoon. You can't tell. And it's this clever symbolism where, yeah, the earth cards are, or the pentacle cards are about carrying a strong weight like a stone, being diligent, working on it, working on something patiently. And at the same time, it might also be a cocoon that holds something like a caterpillar, or I guess cocoons would usually hold butterflies, so that it has this implication, this incredible implication of your work being rewarded in the end. If you just keep on carrying this stone, suddenly you'll realize it's a cocoon and a butterfly comes out. And this is the sort of symbolism that you can only understand if you give time to a deck, if you dedicate time to it. And that's something that I've learned, that any deck, there are no wrong decks. Any deck has some message for you or some information for you that you hadn't thought of before, and that was foreign to you, but that maybe resonates with you. And even if it doesn't resonate with you, it will broaden your horizon and broaden your vision of what a specific card could mean. So yeah, that was my video about what I expected from tarot and what I ended up getting, and how my perspectives changed over time. I hope this inspired you to maybe think back, what kind of misconceptions did you have about tarot when you first started that have been completely debunked? Or maybe think about what other perspectives you could take. Are you too closed off towards other meanings, too closed off towards non-traditional decks? It's a fun exploration process, definitely, and I wish you all the best on it. Have fun, and remember, it's all in the cards.